This is episode number 396 of WP Water Cooler, the changing WordPress ecosystem. Brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's Desktop Server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at serverpress.com. I'm Jason Tucker. I'm an IT director and web developer. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter.
I'm Steve Zangen. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup. She is Say Reed.
She makes things with WordPress.
It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg.
You can go subscribe to us as a podcast. Go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. And while you're there, leave us a review. Also, you can go hang out with us on Discord. Go to wpwatercooler.com/Discord.
What?
Hang out with all of us over there. Discord, it's not just for gaming.
We had Say for a brief moment. Oh, there she is. She's back, but she's going to be out of sync today.
I'm trying.
All good.
So, Cosper, do you want to open us up here and start us off a little bit?
Yeah, so I actually sent... Well, why don't we welcome Chris?
Chris!
Yeah, we've got a guest today. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
I figured I was just the audience. I could be like the peanut gallery back here.
We are here to interact with Chris.
You just can be like, that's lame.
Chris, you just seem really far away, I think.
It's just, I gotta redo this desk one day and fix where the camera is. I mean, that's
Come a little closer.
Maybe switch out your wide angle lens. Fisheye. All right, go ahead, Cosper.
No, yeah. So Chris actually wrote a very interesting and a post that kind of hit close to home to me. Say is also far away now, for those of you watching the video. Chris wrote this post about the changing WordPress ecosystem and how, Chris, do you want to kind of start out with the tweet that you posted a few weeks ago?
Sure. I mean, it came out of a lot of conversations I've had over the last few months, which is basically when you talk to somebody who's not developing for WordPress, the reaction is, I don't want to learn that. There's too much going on. I want to stick with my JavaScript, or I'm a PHP dev. Why would I want to learn WordPress? It's not even real PHP. I mean, all the things we all hear. And really what it comes down to is WordPress has got, for anybody who's not developing in WordPress, it's really gotten so complicated that a lot of people simply don't want to touch it anymore.
Right.
I would say that's the same thing, even if you're not a developer. Going the other way, like people who used to be able to come in and start to develop can't get in that way either. So the developers don't want to cross over and the users don't want to cross over. We're an island.
Which is really interesting because so much of the pushback I've gotten has been, well, that's just old developer. They made this an old young thing, and the whole point was new people don't want to get involved in it. But the flip side, a lot of the counterpoint I've been getting is, well, it's great if you're a designer, or it's great if you're a user. There's so much more users can do, and you're not the first person I've heard say it's harder for users as well. So it's definitely a different beast than it used to be. That's for certain.
Even if you're just stringing a bunch of plugins together to create an elaborate functionality, like say an e-learning site or something, the curve is still steep, even for these plug and go, simple plugins. Plug and go? They're called plugins. Say hello. I'm sorry. Carry on.
So, I brought this to my other co-hosts because it kind of struck a little bit of a chord with me because I haven't really put this out on Front Street or anything, but I am currently looking for a new position. I left Liquid Web about a month ago, and part of the reason that I left was because I've spent the past 4 years working on server-side stuff, and the team there was moving more towards like hardcore development. And there's been so many leaps and bounds, like things in WordPress with Gutenberg, with all this other stuff, that I feel like I'm still a WordPress developer, but one that's like not necessarily one that's fully up to speed with how WordPress is being developed now. So,
well, back in the day, I can relate to what Chris said in this post, because WordPress was very approachable when I first got into it.
Me too.
15 years ago, because I was already a PHP MySQL developer, so it was a natural transition. What I was learning was some of the WordPress best practices, the hooks that were there, but those were easy, compared to the stuff I'd already done in the past. So your skill set, 15 years ago was you needed PHP experience and you needed some CSS experience. That was about it.
That's where I came in. I came in through the CSS route, and I wouldn't be able to learn what I know now. I mean, what I did then now, because it's just like, where do you even start? Like, so for some reason, even taking the themes apart or taking the plugins apart, which is how I learned, just deconstructing things, it's ever so more complicated than it used to be.
Well, and in the post,
who is typing though?
Yeah.
Is the question.
In the post, Chris lists out about 2/3 of the way down. He lists out about 17 technologies that you need. There it is, that you need to know, right, to manage WordPress. So even as an agency owner, right, I actually have different resources to do these different things. I don't know half these things. Right?
I don't use Terminal. I don't think you have to use it if you don't want to. I hate it. Don't want to use it.
Yes, but to really,
yeah, right. You should, but you don't have to.
You don't have to, but to be a power user in WordPress, you really need to know some WP CLI, right? And that
you don't have to, but it makes your life a lot easier.
Absolutely.
That's the difference. So
you could do without any given one of these, though.
No, I don't think so. It depends on what you're building, obviously, right? If you're building a custom theme, you're going to need a lot of this. If you're connecting, REST APIs, you're going to need a whole chunk of it. If you want to do any customization, you're going to need a lot of that.
Right.
And full disclosure, this list is the plugin my team is building at WP Engine. This is the tech list just from that single plugin.
Ooh, what's the plugin do? Or the plug and go, as I like to call it.
It's a content modeler plugin for our Atlas. Atlas is WP Engine's headless hosting. Mm-hmm. A lot of the original market for Atlas, if you look at our materials, is it's targeting WordPress to people who don't want to learn WordPress. So this is a kind of like ACF, only for headless. So building custom post types and content models.
Really?
And we've built a lot of headless WordPress and even WooCommerce here as well, right? And you've got React in here, right? But Gatsby's another one I'd add to into the list, right? I know it's really it's a form of React, but you have to know a little bit about. I'm using Gatsby metaphorically because there's either Gatsby or Next or a lot of platforms that will do that are static site generators, right? So you need some sort of static site generator experience as well if you're talking about headless WordPress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or if you're building a theme, maybe you need to know different types of tags. I mean, the list, this is just one of many lists.
Yes.
But that's kind of the thing, right? If you're a Next.js, you see people out there now, Roy Sibin, who's a good friend of mine, he puts on his bio, he's a Next.js dev for Disney. He focuses on Next.js. Mm-hmm. A lot of this is no longer part of his job description. And you see that with a lot of folks where one tech, any one of these could almost be a position for the most part, not trying to string together 17 of them and just to make a single product.
That's problematic, right? Because then, I mean, in that scenario, WordPress devs should be the highest paid devs out there because look at that skill set, right? But that's for some reason not the way it goes at all. It's like not only do you have to know all of these, but it's just WordPress, so you're not a real dev, even though you have this list of stack.
Yep. Plug and go.
That is so true, and that's part of. I wound up back on this WordPress team largely because of that problem. Even at a WordPress company, there's still a lot of WordPress devs or WordPress engineers aren't real engineer type attitude.
Yeah,
So-
but look at that list and you're like, oh, really? Because most of the devs that I know can't jump into it, and that's why they don't cross over into WordPress, because it has all these other things, which is, I guess your point, right? That's why people aren't crossing over as much.
Part of the issue is now that WordPress has hit such a large ubiquity number. What is it? 40% of the entire internet. It has to be many things to many people, right? And that's I think part of the core of the problem that you described in your blog, in your post here, is that the WordPress project itself has grown far beyond what the original intent was, because it's got to do so many things, right? It has lost its focus.
Oh, so much. But also, with the internet, you can build the same thing 30 different ways. You can use the same different code to build the exact same functioning thing. And, people could argue about what's best. But I think when you bring all of that to WordPress and you look at the overall ecosystem, the plugin devs, the theme devs, just everyone who's involved is bringing a different set of skills. And so they're like, oh, well, the best way to build this is insert their skill set here. And so then even with plugins that have the same functionality, they're built really differently. And so depending on which plugin you choose, that's how it's going to interact with the other stuff. And, you just start to create kind of a Frankenstein of code inside each WordPress site, because it has all of this stuff and it has all of these different libraries and all of these different approaches to code that are being taken for each individual plugin and each individual theme.
I'll agree with all of that. And to what extent are you doing it? If you're an agency building end user sites, that's one thing. But if you're it used to be, you had the Yoasts, you had the WordPress, all these single developers that built companies based on all of them. And now everything's owned by a host. WordPress is not owned by a host yet. I say yet. Yeah. I don't mean anything against those guys, but that's the inevitable now, right? What's the return on getting into it?
We've already taken internal bets on the next company to be.
Yeah, I did not have Yoast on EIG on my bingo card. Was not on it. That wasn't mine. But it's still a hosting company, which totally underscored the point that we made in our acquisitions episode. We were talking about how the hosting companies are really just globbing onto everything. Not to get into a side conversation about that, but we were right again.
The developers on my team, we have other frameworks that we work in, and we specifically have looked at other frameworks because WordPress isn't the best fit for a lot of the projects that we build. Right? It is a good fit.
That's what fit.
It is a good fit for for websites. It's a great CMS. Right, WooCommerce is still, a good e-commerce platform. But when it comes to any of the back office stuff that we're building, or ERP, or those types of projects, we build all those in Laravel. And the reason we did that is because, when we tried to build those things in WordPress, we ended up stripping out most of what WordPress was providing, rather than building up from something like Laravel, which is a very bare bones framework at its core, but very extensible. And so. I'm not saying
WordPress used to be.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the two frameworks are similar or in competition with each other. I'm not going to take Laravel and replace all my WordPress websites with it. That's not what it's for. But I think what happened was, a lot of devs got entrenched in WordPress and tried to make it do everything, right? And so that's sort of led to where we are now, because it's frankly not the right fit for every single project.
Though you can find a plugin to do most of those things, even if it is or is not the best choice.
And that's misleading.
So a thing that I used to like to say at WordCamps and in my talks there was my favorite thing about WordPress is you can build anything with it. My least favorite thing about WordPress is that you can build anything with it.
Yeah.
And people often do.
I looked at Jetpack for the first time in years the other day I don't know why. I forget who suggested something with it. But I replied, it was Red Crew on Twitter, Deborah Edwards or Honoro, and my reply to her was, "It looks like a PM had a drunken binge and just started throwing features at a wall. They have a CRM and Jetpack now." Sorry, there's a lot of good people on that team. I have nothing about it, but
Totally.
wait, what?
Yeah, but those
But, I
people
mean-
didn't make those decisions. Those people just implemented
Exactly.
the decisions that were made.
Who
That
knows who's
is-
making those decisions?
That is an interesting point, though, Chris. Tucker and I were having a conversation the other day. Last night, actually, he asked me about what I like for as far as like database optimization plugins go. And I linked him WP Optimize, which is what I used to use. And I looked at it, and all of a sudden now it's got a caching plugin built into it, like a static caching plugin. It seems like all of these plugins, if they're not built to be extensible, like WooCommerce or EDD, are starting to like really just kitchen sink up.
Yeah.
Well, so right, but what
Pick
you're
a
saying, that's
lane.
exactly what's happening. It's either
Pick a lane.
WooCommerce and you have to pay $200 for any feature that you want to add on, or it's Jetpack that has everything shoved in whether you want it or not. Like these are the two extremes that we seem to be at. By the way, that's owned by the same company. So whatever with that approach. Like it's fine. But also the thing that's happening with Jetpack, which is and has been happening for a long time, shoving every little feature that, may or may not be necessary and just shouldn't be in core, but should probably be in core and not stuck in Jetpack. But that's the same, it feels like that's the same approach that's happening with the code stack in general. It's like, oh, well, this works, so we're just going to toss that in there. And it's easier to make this in React, so we're just going to make this little bit right here and then toss that in there. And then, we'll still have some JavaScript because, you got to have that. So we'll put that on top.
What's the name of the theme that is sort of the Swiss Army knife that everybody uses for everything?
Which
So
one?
now it's Elementor. No, it used
that's
to be of our
Astra.
Astra.
Astra?
Yes.
Astra has become the everything to everyone. Build anything in this theme, and it's just got so much in it. I'm not saying it's bad, right? Astra's actually a good theme, but it's like how much more?
It's no WP Bakery, I'll give it that.
But pick a lane. Pick a lane.
Well, but see, okay, but then on the other hand, in terms of picking a lane, you have these other themes that are, if you have a bakery that makes wheat bread only, this is your theme, right? And you're like, okay, well, that's specific. So there's those are, again, your two extremes. You've got themes that are like hyper focused and niche, and then you've got something like Astra, which is like anything to everybody. So what is this extreme everywhere that we've got going on?
On the
Go ahead.
on the flip side of that, though, too, and this whole thing started about new devs don't want to get into it. With you two, especially Zeke and Say, what would you
Sorry,
even tell a new dev these days?
No, I
Sorry.
I misheard you. I'm sorry.
Um,
No, don't. Just keep going.
I'll tell
Oh
you.
no!
Actually, we hire devs that don't have WordPress experience and have to train them on WordPress, and it is a very slow, long process to do that, right? And we'll typically start them with theme development, right, and then get into some hooks and some plugin development and some custom development, things like that. But I still find myself being a technical advisor, right, which I'm trying to get out of, and I'm trying to focus more on business development, but I can't because 15 years of WordPress knowledge is in my head. And
Yeah.
so people
Yeah.
still
Did you
have
say
questions
50?
about- No, 15.
Okay.
1
I really
5.
can't hear anything properly today.
We know.
I don't want to know what you mistook mine for then.
Yeah.
Inside my head, though.
They
so
had a laughing fit there for a minute, and I missed the joke. So
It's just me. Just
Yeah.
mishearing
I've-
people.
I figured.
Yeah. Anyway, so you bring your folks in and you're trying to get them up to speed on essentially legacy WordPress, right? Because you have to teach them how they got to where it is. You can't just like jump in the pool right there, right? Can you? I mean, I don't know.
No,
Maybe you
it's
do.
really just about. WordPress dev is hard. It's a very large framework with a lot of bloat that's just left over from years of neglect. I mean, Chris had a sentence in the blog post that I keep going back to, and it was, God, what was that sentence? It was about rot.
As we keep focusing on Gutenberg, and I don't have the post up in front of me, but it's basically as we keep focusing on Gutenberg, we're just letting the core of WordPress rot.
It says
that's so sad.
The core of the platform will continue to rot. I thought that sentence just kind of stayed with me. It's harsh, but it's true. And I remember sitting in what do they call those sessions at WordCamp? The coding sessions on Sundays, where they'd bring in the core team and you'd
Community Day.
Right. And I remember sitting in a couple of those sessions with things that I was interested in, and the team, these little pods would get together. And there was, I forgot that one of the things that we were looking at, I was bringing up an issue I had with WordPress, and somebody said, you know what, that code hasn't been touched in 10 years. So if you'd like to dust it off, right? I'd be like, how can that be? Right, but that's
Media Library. Was it Media Library? It was Media Library, wasn't it?
How do you even start dusting that? Because that's the answer when we're having this conversation. Like, so everyone's like, okay, well, go ahead and get in there, and it's like, okay, what is there documentation? Where do it's just like you have to then dedicate yourself to like really going down into this rabbit hole, and then even if you find solutions or build solutions, you have to go advocate for them to get into each build, and you have to go do all this work, and it becomes a political thing. And
if it's not Gutenberg, they don't want to hear it.
Well, even if it is Gutenberg, you know, the amount of things that are currently built into Gutenberg that still need to be built. There's things like having ACF support in Gutenberg. Like, that is like non-existent. There's a couple companies out there that are doing that, but it's like, I'm trying to rebuild WP Watercooler's website right now, just straight using blocks, and that's it, without having to build a whole bunch of extra custom blocks or anything. Near impossible if you're trying to use ACF. It's like none of these things use that technology yet. And so I picked the road of going down Beaver Builder and using Beaver Builder as my way of building this stuff out. And then with Themer, I can literally hook anything into anything, and I feel like I'm just like the man until I get to the point where I'm like, oh, here's blocks, and I'm like, none of these things talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Like, what? Right. I can't do anything. Wow. Okay, so I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. This is great. Awesome. Thanks.
What you're talking about is you know what Chris's issue here in this blog post makes me think of these platforms that have been built inside of WordPress, right? We talk about Jetpack. Beaver Builder is one of them. Elementor is one of them. WooCommerce is one of them. These are other platforms that are built inside of WordPress. So every decision that WordPress makes, you know, as far as going toward Gutenberg, has effects and impact on these other platforms that people have built businesses around.
Yep. And that's why Astra wants to be something for everybody.
Yes.
Like a whole cavalcade of businesses, and you know, not just the businesses that are operating with WooCommerce, but the people who help them run those websites.
I think cavalcade was Say's secret word today.
It was. I just had to get it out there. Cavalcade. And all the new developers.
When I got into WordPress development, like all those years ago, 15 years ago, when I first started looking at WordPress, the thing to do was to go, if you wanted to figure out how a plugin worked, the easiest way to do that was to go look at Hello Dolly and pick that apart. That was the whole reason, if I recall correctly, Matt has stated it several times, that was like your introduction to building a plugin. Mm-hmm. You could go pick that apart, you could go do whatever you needed to do with that and start to learn some of the internals. Hello Dolly doesn't apply anymore.
No.
It's still being included. Chris, does WP Engine still delete Hello Dolly? Do you know that off the top of your head?
You know, I've never looked. That's a good question. I don't know. Also, we do have a site builder, so I can't imagine we've changed it.
Wait. Right. Is there a Hello Dolly block? Has anyone looked?
Are you? Hello Dolly still comes with WordPress? I'm unzipping 5.8 right now.
Is it still in there? We don't even know.
It is.
And
it's still in there. Yeah.
Hello Dolly version 1.7.2 is still in there.
1.7.2. Wow, that sounds
low. I want to know how they got to version 1.7.2 of Hello Dolly. What was in those earlier versions or what wasn't in those earlier versions?
So what is the default plugin for people to start picking WordPress apart now? What is that Hello Dolly now?
Or even the theme. Like the themes have gotten really complicated.
Well, sadly, it's
because
been
now
Jetpack.
they're the basis for the full site editing. So they've become less of a like standardized baseline and more of a tool for experimentation. That's a really different shift in terms of default theme. So
that's a really good point too, and that's a huge shift on a lot of things, right? It used to be all this legacy crap we're talking about was because we didn't want to break things. Now that whole paradigm's kind of thrown out the window if it involves Gutenberg. You go from one version to the next, and they've changed how this post works, and you have to retrain people on how to use it again, and that's a problem.
We have a couple minutes left, and I feel the need. We've been bitching a lot lately about WordPress, and we've done that our entire show, so that's how it goes. But it does feel a little, I don't know, just bummery. So how is this? Do you see any shining lights on the horizon? Are there any silver linings? Do you see this changing? In your response that you got, Chris, from other folks on Twitter, were there any beams of hope? Rays of hope?
The bad thing, I'm trying to find something positive. I did see the designers seem to like the new system. It's, a lot of things, the whole new thing with everything is design matters. And I'm pretty sure that that's the only thing that matters right now. And designers seem to like it. But from content editors to users to developers, it's not for that. Just visual designers, site layouts, that type of thing. Those folks seem to really love it. So I guess if that's what they're going for, it's a good thing.
I would say that what we've talked about gives developers the opportunity to specialize, right? So a WordPress site or project is no longer going to be managed by one person, right? If you really are doing everything, right? So it does take different disciplines, and so if you happen to be a React developer, you'll always have work within the WordPress ecosystem, right? So there's now different kinds of developers that need to develop on WordPress, right? I try to jump in and create a simple plugin for creating a Gutenberg block. I'm not a React guy, so I don't.
You're like, this sucks.
I was.
It really
lost,
does.
But a React developer has a good opportunity, with WordPress development companies. So there are different disciplines.
Yeah.
That's your positive, is that more people can get involved?
No, I think, I've always encouraged people to specialize, right? When I get a resume that has 50 technologies listed at the top of it, I round file it. I'm done. I won't even interview that person. If somebody comes in with a very specific specialty, if we've got that need, they get an interview. And so I've always recommended that software developers specialize.
Yeah.
That's your positive lining for the expansion of the ecosystem, is that it allows people to specialize?
Look, this has grown and it
yes, that I'll take it, I guess. Sure.
It's grown, and that's just the nature of the beast. That's what this is. WordPress now controls 40% of the internet. It's not going away, right? We can vent all we want. WordPress is going nowhere, right? But there are different kinds of opportunities now that it's grown.
But I guess I was more thinking, Chris, did you get any response from anyone who says, no, it's not like this, we're changing and gonna be better and more integrated?
Designers, up and
Just
down, with
designers.
one exception. And somebody might want to have, if you want to continue this conversation another way, Courtney Robertson, who's working with the Learn team.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
She's much more... I'm the old get off my lawn, the old man at this point. I realize that, but she is so much more positive about everything.
You know what, Chris? That should be the tagline for this show. Get off
Get off my lawn. Hey, y'all, I have to jump. I'm so sorry, but I have a hard stop at this time.
We
We're
appreciate
wrapping
it.
up anyhow.
Thanks.
Cheers.
You have a good one. Well, that about has it. Awesome. It's good to talk about this stuff. And,
Plug and go.
WordPress is
Just plug and
changing.
go.
Plug and go.
All you gotta do.
Get off my lawn.
Oh man. Well, here's our outro. Thank you very much for watching. Go over to wpwatercore.com/subscribe to subscribe to this content and all the other content that we put out on the network. Go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or you can watch us like you're watching us now on YouTube. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Get off my lawn.